The Shark Deck.
Hello, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. I took an entire night and watched 5 stand-up specials. I started with Jim Gaffigan's Dark and Pale. Jim's previous special, Comedy Monster, I had, if it wasn't number 1 on my end of the year list, it was way up there. So I'm like, all right, let me watch Dark Pale, and it's not good. I could kind of tell right away. Jim coming out in the mask didn't work. Doing COVID jokes just felt like, what are we doing? And the material just wasn't clicking. And I'm like, is it me? And I went on Facebook and I asked the Facebook group, which is Daily Comedy News Podcast Group. I'm like, is this special bad? And people kind of agree with me. So really surprised at that. That will not make the end of the year list. So then I'm like, all right, let me switch over to Netflix. I haven't watched Mark Norman yet, but Netflix put in front of me Jared Freed's 37 and Single. I know Jared a smidge. He had a podcast affiliated with a podcast company I used to work at. And I like Jared a lot. I liked his podcast a lot. And I'm like, all right, this should be good. And immediately I was like, this is better because if nothing else, just the pacing and his snappiness on stage. And I was really enjoying that. But I'm an admitted comedy snob, and a little while in, it kind of lost me because none of the stories felt real. They felt like they were well-crafted comedy stories, but they didn't feel like they were based in any kind of reality. So I punched out on that. I think it's totally watchable. You'll enjoy it. You'll laugh. Like I said, I'm a comedy snob. So then I went to Mark Norman. My notes, much better. And Norman is faster paced. If you don't like a Mark Norman joke, wait 4 seconds. He's got another one right behind it. Couple of good laughs out there. I did note that he had to beg for clapter a few times. He threw out a line and the audience didn't do anything with it, just silence. And he kind of stood there for a second and got the clapter. Maybe some editing there might have helped that special a little bit. But Norman was pretty good. That'll make the list. Then I switched over to Peacock and Chris Fleming's Hell. And right away, I was like, oh, this is really fun. I like altier things. It was quirky, high energy, tickled my brain in a way that the other specials didn't just because it was different. I'll agree with the review that I read yesterday. The sketches kill it. It totally kills the momentum. You'll be in the middle of the stand-up, you're feeling the room, and then cuts to a sketch. And the sketches are okay, but just in terms of a special, it just didn't work. And by like the 3rd time that the sketches interrupted the stand-up, I was like, I had enough. Chris Fleming's Hell probably would work better as half an hour, but it will make my end-of-the-year list. And then it was Friday night at 10 o'clock, and I remembered Joe List was debuting his special on YouTube, quote-unquote, live. So I'm like, all right, I'll watch that. And I put Joe List on, and perfectly fine hour of comedy at a comedy club. Really funny. You should watch it. Liked it a lot. I'm going to push back on the word special. We have to stop throwing special out there just because something is filmed and put on YouTube. Not everything is a special. Joe List did an hour of comedy that was really funny and really good, and you should watch it. It's not a special, and just because of that, I can't put it on the end of the year list. But totally watchable, totally funny. You should do it. Now, the YouTube algorithm, after I switched Joe List off, oh my God. Everything it's suggesting to me is now a Joe List hour. Like, I like Joe List. Also was lightly affiliated with Joe and Mark Norman when they had their Tuesdays with Stories podcast at the podcast company affiliated with my podcast company. So, I know them. I had meatballs with them one day on 9th Avenue. But like, just in terms of the YouTube algorithm, it's like Joe List, Joe List, Joe List, Joe List, Joe List. Like, guys, I like stand-up comedy, but show me something else. Anyway, here's the updated best of 2023 list. I'm going to include 2 things that are not comedy specials. The funniest thing of 2023 so far, Kunk on Earth. You'll find that on Netflix. Number 1 special is Tom Segura's. 2, Kyle Kinane. 3, Nate Bargatze's Hello World. You may have forgotten about that. That came out in January. You'll find that on Amazon. Cocaine Bear. Cocaine Bear is amazing. I'm hearing more and more people talk about Cocaine Bear. There are some laugh out loud scenes in that movie. That's streaming on Peacock. 4th special of the year, Jay McBride's Daddy's Girl. 5, Jim Jeffries. That came out on Amazon in February. Hari Kondabolu's special. That came out in April on YouTube. The last third's a little soft, but the front 2 are good. Chris Rock, remember him? He had a big Netflix special that was live. That was a big deal. Remember that one? That's number 7. Jimmy O Yang's Guess How Much is number 8. I think that's on Amazon. The Roast of Mr. Peanut. Again, if you think I'm crazy, why don't you go on YouTube, watch the 15-minute version of the Roast of Mr. Peanut, and tell me that that's not good. Big J. Okerson at 10. Mark Norman makes his chart debut at number 11. Number 12, Nimesh Patel's special was really good. Sarah Silverman's isn't bad at 13. Chris Fleming Hell, slightly behind Sarah Silverman there. And John Early at number 15. Now, who's not on the list? There's a lot of big names on this list. Jim Gaffigan, Dark Pale, not on the list. Joe List, Jared Freed, Amy Schumer, John Mulaney's Baby J, I wasn't feeling. Lewis Black wasn't feeling. Hannah Gadsby's third special, didn't feel it. Mark Maron, who I normally love, didn't make the list. Andrew Santino. Bert Kreischer's special back in March, I didn't love the middle and I didn't love the end. Greg Warren, I wrote down hated. Sweetened audience is my note there. And Kevin Hart's special did nothing for me. I have not seen Roseanne's special, and I have not seen the 8 trillion specials you'll find on YouTube. That's my list. Be curious what your list is. Why don't you go on the Daily Comedy News Facebook group and share what you've been into. Will Ferrell crashed the USC Trojans football practice on Friday. He gave the team a mini pep talk, which I'm sure they needed, before dropping to the ground and rolling around on the field in Will Ferrell-style hilarity. Several Trojan players, including reigning Heisman Trophy winner and 2024 projected #1 overall pick Caleb Williams, posted photos with Ferrell to their social media accounts. Sasheer Zamata is excited about her current special. It'll be on YouTube on August 29th. Sasheer said, "This is the first stand-up special I've ever had, the first one I've produced, and I'm just excited for y'all to see it. If you like it, tell your friends, your family, your enemies, anyone who owes you money." In The First Woman, she jokes about dating woes, masturbation, menstruation, equality, and even Amelia Earhart. And here's some fun facts. Drinks were provided by Kendall Jenner's 818 Tequila. Tacos, courtesy of the Lime Truck, and guests went home with period cups as a callback to the chunk of the comedy special about periods. There has been so much drama at the Fringe. This from unheard.com. Andrew Doyle writes, "Canceling our comedy show proves the point." This is the show I was talking about yesterday that was canceled. Andrew Doyle writes, 5 years ago, Andy Shaw and I set up a monthly comedy night in London called Comedy Unleashed. Our objective was to challenge what we perceived to be the groupthink that was developing within the industry. Promoters, TV commissioners, critics, even comedians themselves had begun to turn on acts who failed to convey the correct political opinions, and many fellow comics confessed to me that they had began to self-censor for the sake of their careers. And so, we launched a night which would encourage innovative and free-thinking acts, where we might cultivate a comedy-literate audience who understood that the art form can't exist without the potential to cause offense. Not that the acts we booked necessarily had to be offensive, rather, they would be free to tease the limitations of the audience's tolerance should they wish. The only condition was that they have to be funny. This year, we decided to make an appearance at the trade fair known as the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. We booked a venue in Leith on the outskirts of the city. The bill was to include Bruce Devlin, Mary Burke, Dominic Frisby, Alastair Williams, and the co-creator of the classic sitcoms Father Ted and the It Crowd, Graham Linehan. Those are 2 great shows. Again, this is the show that was canceled that I told you about yesterday. Andrew Doyle writes, "Given that we knew our show would sell out, we didn't advertise Graham in advance, preferring instead to tease the audience with the prospect of a surprised canceled comedian. With the show just a few days away, we finally announced his appearance, and within 24 hours, the venue, Leith Arches, had posted a statement on Instagram stating that they, quote, do not support this comedian or his views, and he will not be allowed to perform at our venue and is canceled from Thursday's comedy show with immediate effect." Doyle writes, "The histrionics didn't stop there. We're an inclusive venue," the statement continued, "and will not allow such views to violate our space." The venue later deleted the post and replaced it. Doyle asks how a venue can claim to be inclusive when it excludes performers who do not subscribe to the ideology of its staff is anyone's guess. Those who complained to the venue could simply have refrained from buying a ticket. Instead, they sought to prevent the audience members of a sold-out show from making their own decisions. Meanwhile, at the Fringe, Evo Graham got 2 stars from The Guardian. His show was called Organized Fun. The Guardian writes, "He may be making his 10th Edinburgh appearance, but you can't accuse Evo Graham of coasting. He's got 3 separate shows at this year's festival, and the main one, Organized Fun, takes his stand-up in a new direction at the behest of his infant daughter," he explains. "This is a wholly inconsequential hour, which begins with stand-up below Graham's usual standard and ends with a participatory game show below the standard of other comics who do that sort of thing much better. Some comics have a flair for this crowd work heavy comedy. Graham isn't one of them. There's no spectacle, nor much fun, organized or otherwise, to the game he's created, which in any case gets bogged down in admin. Props to the veteran for trying something new, but as Taskmaster fans may have anticipated, he does not make a success of it." 2 stars, Pleasant Courtyard through August 27th. And that's your comedy news for today. And I'm wondering why my voice is raspy, because that often happens if I record 3 of these in a row. I only did this one. I feel fine. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. See you tomorrow.